Don't leave right away. Wait in your truck for 5 minutes, then come around back to the service entrance. The whisper was right against my ear, cutting through the jukebox's final song. I turned to look at Maya, the waitress with the tired eyes. She was close, closer than a waitress should be, her hand brushing my shoulder. My husband can't know I'm here tonight. That single sentence changed everything. One moment, I was just another patron finishing his drink in a bar that smelled like stale beer and bleach. The next, I was an accomplice to something I didn't understand. Thursday nights were my ritual. After a week of drywall dust and saw cuts, Sullivan's was my decompression chamber. And Maya was part of that ritual. The waitress who remembered my usual without asking, who never made small talk unless I started it. Tonight, the place was emptier than usual. Just me and the ghosts of happier hours. I watched her wipe down tables with a nervous energy I'd never seen before, her movements quick and jerky. When she flipped the open sign to closed, the click of the deadbolt echoed through the silent room. That sound sealed us in together, just the two of us, in the dim light. That's when I saw it. The faint purple shadow circling her wrist like a bracelet she never wanted, visible just for a second as she reached for a final glass. She led me to a booth in the back, the vinyl seat cracking under our weight. The only light came from the neon beer signs, casting everything in blue and red shadows. "His name is Marcus," she began, and just saying his name seemed to cost her something. I knew that name. Everyone in our small town knew that name. Marcus ran the auto shop on the edge of town, the one with the pit bulls chained out front. He had that kind of reputation that preceded him, the kind people lowered their voices to discuss. "He thinks I'm visiting my sister 2 towns over," she continued, her fingers tracing a watermark on the table. "I called in a favor to get this shift. He can't know I picked up extra work." She told me about the conversation she'd overheard last night. Marcus on the phone with someone, talking about a deal going bad, about needing to disappear for a while, about taking her with him whether she wanted to go or not. "If I go home tonight," she said, her voice barely audible, going to her mouth. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might pass out. "Back door," she whispered, already moving. "Stockroom." She didn't wait to see if I followed, just turned and hurried toward the rear of the bar. I trailed behind her, my heart hammering against my ribs. The stockroom was exactly what you'd expect. Cramped, smelling of cardboard and stale beer, stacks of liquor boxes reaching toward the ceiling. She pulled me behind the tallest stack just as we heard the first rattle at the front door. Someone was trying the handle. Then came the knocking. Not polite tapping, but heavy, insistent pounding that vibrated through the whole building. "Maya!" The voice came through the glass, deep and impatient. "I know you're in there. Open the damn door." She pressed herself against me, trembling so hard I could feel it through my own body. I held my breath, praying the deadbolt would hold. We heard footsteps circling the building, then more pounding at the back door. "Maya!" he shouted again, and there was something in his voice that made my blood run cold. Not just anger, but possession. Like she was a misplaced belonging he'd come to collect. The minutes stretched out, each one feeling like an hour. We stood there in the dark, surrounded by boxes of whiskey and vodka, listening as he tried each entrance. Finally, we heard an engine start up outside, the sound fading slowly as he drove away. Neither of us moved for a full minute after the sound disappeared. When we finally emerged from our hiding spot, the air in the bar felt different somehow. Thicker, more dangerous. That moment in the stockroom changed everything. There was no walking away now. I'd already chosen a side just by hiding. We stood in the back office, the door closed tight, the only light coming from a small desk lamp. Maya's hands were still shaking as she leaned against the filing cabinet. "He'll come back," she said, her voice tight. "When I'm not home by morning, he'll come back here first." I looked around the small space. The messy desk, the safety posters on the wall, the ancient computer. This wasn't a place for planning escapes, but here we were. "Your car or mine?" I asked. She shook her head immediately. "Mine's parked behind his shop. he'd see it missing. The moment before we stepped out the back door felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. We both paused, listening for any sound, any sign he might still be nearby. The alley was empty, just the hum of a distant highway and the smell of spilled beer from the dumpster. We moved quickly, keeping to the shadows, scanning every parked car, every dark window for movement. The walk to my truck felt like it took forever, each step louder than it should have been on the quiet street. When we finally reached the vehicle, I fumbled with my keys, my hands suddenly uncooperative. The click of the unlocking doors sounded like a gunshot in the silent night. We slid inside, and I started the engine, the familiar rumble of my truck feeling like the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly gone soft at the edges. I pulled away from the curb slowly, not using my headlights until we turned the corner, watching the rearview mirror for any sign of movement behind us. The town slept on, completely unaware that two of its residents were slipping away into the darkness. The first few blocks we drove in complete silence, both of us watching the empty streets, both of us holding our breath at every intersection. The town felt different at this hour, not just quiet, but watchful. Every porch light seemed like a searching eye, every parked car a potential threat. I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights closing in behind us. Maya sat curled against the passenger door, her knees pulled up to her chest like a child. She watched the sleeping houses slide past, each dark window holding a life she was leaving behind. It wasn't until we hit the county road leading toward the interstate that she finally spoke. "He wasn't always like this," she said, her voice soft against the hum of the tires. The words came out in fragments between the pools of light from occasional street lamps. "When we met, he was charming. Had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room." She traced patterns on the fogged window glass. The auto shop was doing well then. He had plans to expand, maybe open a second location. I kept my eyes on the road, letting the silence between us stretch, giving her space to find the words she needed to say. The yellow lines flicked past, leading us further from everything familiar. The first time he gave me an allowance, questioning every dollar I spent. The highway entrance appeared ahead, and I merged onto the empty asphalt ribbon that would lead us away from our town, from Marcus, from everything she'd known. He isolated me from my friends, one by one, said they were a bad influence, that they didn't respect our marriage. My family lives across the country, so that was easy. I didn't even realize how alone I was until it was too late. She finally turned from the window to look at me. "You don't notice the cage being built around you when it's made of familiar things. Your home, your marriage, your daily routine." I thought about my own life then. The quiet apartment, the solitary meals, the way I'd carefully constructed my existence to avoid complications. And yet here I was, driving into the night with a woman I barely knew, her dangerous husband possibly already looking for us. The irony wasn't lost on me. "He started talking about moving a few months ago," she said. "Said we needed a fresh start, that people in town were talking about us. I think he's in trouble with some people he owes money to. Last night I heard him on the phone. He was scared. And when Marcus gets scared, he gets dangerous." She wrapped her arms around herself. That's when I knew I had to run. Tonight was my only chance. We drove in silence for a while, the only sound the hum of the road beneath us. I realized I was holding the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had gone white. I forced myself to relax my grip, to breathe. The darkness felt both terrifying and freeing, a blanket that hid us, but also hid whatever might be coming. The Starlight Motel sign glowed like a beacon in the night, its flickering neon promising anonymity and nothing more. The place looked exactly as advertised. A single-story strip of doors, cracked pavement parking lot, and the faint smell of cigarette smoke and disinfectant that seems to cling to all such places. I parked around back, away from the road, and we sat there for a moment, watching the office window. "You wait here," I said. "I'll get the room." She nodded, pulling her jacket tighter around herself. I could see the exhaustion in her face now that the adrenaline was fading, the way her shoulders slumped forward under the weight of everything that had happened. The office was sailboats on the walls. I flipped the lock behind us and engaged the security chain. The moment the door closed, something in Maya broke. She slid down the wall to the floor, her whole body shaking with silent sobs. I stood there awkwardly for a moment, then knelt beside her, unsure what to do. After a minute, she leaned into me, her face pressed against my shoulder, and I felt the dampness of her tears through my shirt. We stayed like that until the shaking stopped. I helped her to one of the beds, then went to make coffee with the tiny packets and the motel coffee maker that looked like it had seen better decades. The ritual of it, filling the carafe with water, measuring the coffee, waiting for it to brew, felt absurdly normal given our circumstances. We drank the bitter coffee from thin plastic cups, sitting on opposite beds, not speaking. The reality of our situation settled over us both. This room, with its thin walls and cheaper furniture, was our temporary sanctuary. But morning would come, and with it, decisions we weren't ready to make. I watched her as she stared into her coffee cup, her face pale in the harsh motel light. The adrenaline crash had left dark circles under her eyes, and she looked younger than she had in the bar, more vulnerable. Outside, I could hear the occasional truck rumble past on the interstate, heading somewhere else, somewhere that wasn't here. "What happens at checkout time?" she asked quietly, not looking up from her cup. "I don't know," I said honestly. "We'll figure it out in the morning." She nodded slowly, then set her cup on the nightstand and lay down on the bed, curling onto her side, facing the wall. I turned off the main light, leaving just the bathroom light on with the door cracked for some illumination. I lay on the other bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, listening to her breathing slowly even out as she fell into an exhausted sleep. Through the crack in the curtains, I could see the first faint light of dawn beginning to color the sky. The night was over. Whatever came next was waiting for us just beyond that motel room door. The morning light through those cheap curtains felt like an accusation. I woke to the sound of Maya already moving around the room, her footsteps soft on the stained carpet. She'd folded the bedspread neatly, as if good housekeeping could somehow normalize our situation. Up dead. Everyone will assume I wandered off in some confused state. That's when I saw her resolve solidify. The fear in her eyes replaced by something colder, sharper. We both knew going back wasn't an option anymore. At the motel office, I paid for another night in cash while Maya waited in the truck. Then we drove to the ATM outside the grocery store 3 towns over. I emptied my savings account, every last dollar of the emergency fund I'd been building for years. The machine spit out a thick stack of bills that felt both inadequate and terrifying. As we merged back onto the highway heading north instead of south, I caught our reflection in a store window. 2 people who looked like they were running, even if no one was chasing us yet. That final glance in the rearview mirror showed our town shrinking behind us, taking with it every familiar thing I'd ever known. Some choices, once made, can't be unmade. They become part of your bones. The first 100 miles passed in near silence, just the hum of tires on asphalt and the staticky scan of radio stations that eventually faded into nothing. We found a rhythm in this unexpected partnership, the way I'd glance at the gas gauge exactly when she'd suggest stopping, how she'd hand me a fresh coffee just as I started feeling tired. At a truck stop outside of nowhere, we sat in a cracked vinyl booth eating eggs that tasted like cardboard, and she told me about her grandmother's farm in Oregon, a place she hadn't seen since she was 12. I told her about my uncle's cabin in Montana, a memory from a childhood fishing trip. We spread the road atlas across the Formica table, our fingers tracing routes that led away from everything familiar. The paper felt like possibility itself. That's when I understood the full cost of this choice. Helping her meant losing my business, my home, every connection I'd built in that town. Marcus would come looking, and my disappearance would confirm whatever story he'd crafted. She looked at me across that diner table, her eyes asking the question she couldn't voice. I just nodded, folding the map to show the route northwest. Some roads don't appear on any map. Some choices lead you places you never knew you needed to go. The highway stretched ahead like a gray ribbon into unfamiliar country. Each need to be.